Shedeur. Shedeur, my guy. Shedeur played with the threes. He looked frustrated, certainly. They weren't in sync. Throw the ball away, Shedeur. He had one of those negative plays, which is the knock on him. It's not a bad play to throw the ball away. Got a little humble pie, but no problem. No problem. Your career will not be defined by a second half of a third preseason game playing with third stringers.
Why would an NFL team bring in one of the most talked about college quarterbacks just to sideline him? From the moment Shedeur Sanders stepped into Cleveland Browns camp, fans expected fireworks. But what followed wasn't just unexpected, it was suspicious. 0 first-team reps, thrown into a preseason game with third-string linemen and wideouts that couldn't get open. Then, after just 4 pass attempts, people wrote him off? It's not just fans raising questions anymore. Even ESPN insiders are calling it out, suggesting the Browns didn't give Shedeur a fair shot from day one. They handed opportunities to others, but with Shedeur, it almost felt like they were trying to break him. And here's the wild part. This all comes after a college career that turned heads, sparked headlines, and made him one of the most watched prospects in the game.
I want to see how Shedeur reacts and adapts to this. This was not the success. He had success in his first game. So let's see.
So what's really going on here? Was this a test of humility? A case of tough love? Or are we watching something a little deeper, a little darker unfold behind the scenes? Because for someone this talented, what happened in Cleveland just doesn't make sense. And it might only be the beginning. From the outside, Shedeur Sanders walking into Browns training camp looked like the start of something big. Here was a college star, a proven leader, precision passer, and the type of quarterback with a presence you can't teach. But almost immediately, things felt off. Despite all the media buzz and fan interest surrounding his preseason debut, Shedeur wasn't practicing with the starters, not even with the second-string offense. He was buried on the depth chart, taking snaps with the third-team unit. Guys just trying to make the roster. No real chemistry, no protection, no time to settle.
And Joe looked nice on that touchdown throw to Harold Fannin Jr., who also looked nice. But good job there. Dillon Gabriel got to play with the twos. Remember, kids, Dillon Gabriel has had 3 offenses and offense coordinators, 60-plus games in college, 3 different schools. He looks well prepared.
Now compare that to Dillon Gabriel. Another rookie, sure, but one who got long looks with the twos, a steadier line, more timing with receivers. Gabriel was set up to shine. Shedeur, not even close. And yet, nothing was said. No public comments from the coaches explaining the reps. No press conference giving fans a clear answer. Just silence, and a sense that something wasn't right behind closed doors. For a player of Shedeur's caliber, this wasn't just unusual, it was unheard of. And as training camp rolled toward its final days, it became clear the Browns weren't giving him a real shot. But it wasn't just the reps that raised eyebrows. Things were about to get even more obvious during live game time. When the Browns finally gave Shedeur Sanders game time in the preseason, many expected him to prove the hype was real. But what fans saw instead wasn't a fair audition. It looked more like a setup.
Optimism for the Browns. I feel more optimistic than national people think. I thought the rookies looked good today. Schlesinger and Fannin looked really good, and Graham. I think they're going to get a big influx of young talent, and I think they'll be better than people think. I don't think we're going to the Super Bowl. I hope we can, but I think Coach has done a good job of getting this team ready, and we've got 2 weeks now to talk about all this, which we absolutely will. And
while Dillon Gabriel took the field, surrounded by capable receivers and a second-string O-line built to protect, Shedeur was thrown in with the threes, players on the fringe of the league just trying to survive camp cuts. No separation from receivers, no time in the pocket, no rhythm. From the jump, it was a hostile environment for any young quarterback, and it showed on the stat sheet. Just 2 completions on 4 pass attempts, 7 total yards, and a 56.2 passer rating. Even worse, he was sacked behind a collapsing line with 0 pocket integrity. Critics were quick to pounce, calling it a flop, but anyone who watched closely saw the bigger picture. He wasn't outplayed, he was out-resourced. To any experienced football mind, this wasn't about talent. It was about conditions. You don't test an engine by putting it on flat tires. Shedeur's frustration was obvious, not in his attitude, but in the way he struggled to force plays that weren't there. And who wouldn't? These weren't NFL starters. It wasn't even second-string quality. So how can you evaluate a quarterback when he's set up to fail from the snap? That's exactly the question fans started asking, until someone from the inside finally spoke up. And once his comments hit the air, they changed everything. When fans started voicing their frustration over Shedeur Sanders' treatment, the Browns stayed quiet until someone broke the silence. And it wasn't just anyone. It was ESPN Cleveland's own Tony Rizzo, a veteran insider who's been covering the Browns for years. But his take wasn't soft. In fact, it confirmed what many had suspected all along. Rizzo didn't pull punches. He called out what he saw: a lack of rhythm, frustration on Shedeur's face, and an offensive unit completely out of sync. ... But even more telling were the comparisons he made. While Dillon Gabriel looked comfortable, had more control, and was working behind a functional line, Shedeur was dropped into chaos, and yet Rizzo didn't blame him. What he said next made everything clear. "This won't define your career," he said. "You got a little humble pie today, but that's not a bad thing." Wait, humble pie? That one comment set off a wave of speculation online. Was this the Browns trying to humble Shedeur Sanders? A calculated move to test his ego, to send a message? Because one thing was obvious: this wasn't about talent. It was about tone. While coaches kept things vague, Rizzo's words gave viewers a rare glimpse into the mindset inside the organization, and it didn't look good. If this was a development season, why play games with a rookie's confidence? And most importantly, why waste a preseason game just to prove a point? Something deeper seemed to be happening, something that wasn't about football. And as cuts loomed, so did a much bigger question. Was this ever a real competition, or a quiet takedown in plain sight? At this point, it's hard not to ask the uncomfortable question. Was Shedeur Sanders ever supposed to succeed in Cleveland? From the start, it looked like a mismatch in intention. Sure, they drafted him. Sure, there were headlines. But when it came time to compete, the reps weren't there. The support was non-existent. And the system, frankly, seemed designed to expose his weaknesses rather than highlight his potential. Now, people are starting to connect the dots. Some fans, and even analysts, are saying what others won't: that Shedeur was never in a real quarterback battle, that this wasn't about evaluating 4 talented QBs and choosing the best. It was about sending a message. Reports have circulated that the organization might have viewed him as needing to be humbled. Others claim he was brought in for publicity, not position. It hasn't been confirmed, but the signs are hard to ignore. No first-team reps, no support in-game, and a tone from coaches and commentary that feels more dismissive than developmental. Even the way people talk about him is different. When Gabriel makes a risky throw, he's taking chances. When Shedeur gets sacked behind a broken line, he needs to play smarter. The deck wasn't shuffled the same. It was stacked. And if this really was a quiet attempt to clip a young player's confidence before he even had a chance to settle in, then it says more about the team than the talent. But with NFL roster cuts looming, there's one undeniable fact. The clock is ticking, and someone's about to be out. The only question now is, who makes the cut? And what happens if Shedeur doesn't? The preseason is almost over. The tape is out, and the most important week of camp is here, cut week. Teams across the NFL are making brutal decisions on who stays, who goes, and who gets quietly stashed on the practice squad, hoping no other team notices. Every team has a quarterback battle, but Cleveland's looks chaotic. 4 QBs on the roster, and there's no way they're keeping all of them. Kenny Pickett, Joe Flacco, Dillon Gabriel, and Shedeur Sanders. You do the math, but move is coming, fast. So what are the options? Keep him? That would mean cutting a veteran. Not likely. Practice squad? Risky. Another team could sign him the moment he clears waivers. Trade? Possible and maybe even smart. Other teams are already showing interest. Cut him outright? That would be the most dramatic option and the most controversial. And let's not pretend this is a quiet story. Shedeur Sanders has fans, massive ones. His father is Deion Sanders. He has a college career that lit up headlines, and he brings not just talent, but attention. Teams know what he offers, and some might just be waiting, ready to scoop him up. So if Cleveland really lets him walk, it might backfire badly. Because what happens if Shedeur lands someplace that actually develops young quarterbacks? A team that gives him honest reps and serious weapons. Then we'd all be having a very different conversation. One where Cleveland didn't just lose a battle, they lost the quarterback they never truly gave a chance. No matter what happens this week, whether Shedeur Sanders stays, goes, or gets picked up by another team, one thing is clear. This moment will not define his career. Because if we're being real, Shedeur wasn't built for easy paths. At Jackson State, people questioned his competition. He shut them up with record-breaking numbers. At Colorado, people doubted his transition. He lit up primetime games, showed poise under pressure, and proved he could lead a locker room on the national stage. Now, in the NFL, the stakes are higher, but the strategy is no different. Get in, get tested, then take over. One awkward preseason game in Cleveland won't change that. And let's be honest, how many future stars were overlooked early on? Patrick Mahomes sat behind Alex Smith. Tom Brady was a 6th-round pick. Even Hall of Famers have rough starts. Sometimes the system isn't made for you. That doesn't mean you change who you are. It just means you find a better system. Shedeur is more than a quarterback. He's a brand, a leader, a headline maker. And in the right offense, with coaches who believe in him, he won't just survive, he'll explode. So maybe Cleveland wasn't the plan. Maybe this was never about fitting in. Maybe this was the wake-up call before the breakthrough. Because history never remembers the preseason struggles. It remembers what happens after. After everything that's happened. The limited reps, the uneven playing field, the public speculation. One thing is undeniable. Shedeur Sanders was thrown into a situation that never felt fair. Whether it was politics, perception, or just poor planning, what played out in Cleveland wasn't a quarterback battle. It was a showcase of double standards. But maybe that's exactly what Shedeur needed. Because for some players, early criticism breaks them. But for others, it builds something even stronger. Hunger, determination, the type of mental edge that turns good prospects into franchise leaders. Shedeur didn't ask for a handout. All he's ever wanted was a fair shot. And if the Browns won't give it to him, another team will. He brings arm talent, maturity, charisma, and a national following that's rare for a rookie. That's not just value. That's potential waiting to explode under the right conditions. And it poses a question the Browns may be forced to answer later. If he lights it up elsewhere, what will this moment say about Cleveland? Because this isn't just about football. It's about how talent gets overlooked. how narratives are created before players get a real chance, and how sometimes the underdog isn't the one fighting to prove he's talented, but the one proving he should have been taken seriously all along. So now it's your turn. Was Shedeur set up to fail? Where do you want to see him land next? Are the Browns blind to his upside? Or is this just part of the process? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because one thing's for sure, this story is just beginning.